Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 100 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. We're nearing the end of the month, so it's time for me to shout out my patrons. My sincere thanks goes out to all of my current patrons: Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Forrest Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Lyndon Onstead, Julio Herrera, Matthew Saint, and Utuk Zul. Remember, it's just $1 per month to join in and get this monthly shoutout, as well as full scripts of every show and audio outtakes. Now, on to the show. Having reached this centennial episode, I wanted to take a look back at some of my previous shows to see if there are any updates or additions that I wanted to make. And sure enough, a trio of topics stuck out to me as needing some additional comments. So, let's hop in our DeLorean, or TARDIS, or take a jog on the cosmic treadmill, or whatever your time vehicle of choice is, and head back, starting with the very beginning. Way back in episode 1, I discussed the various reboots that DC has had over the years. At the time of its release, Doomsday Clock was still in the middle of its 12-issue run, and it, along with rumors coming from DC's offices, seemed to be hinting towards a new reboot coming soon. Then we heard tales of a 5G or 5-generation plan, with a full timeline leaked to the comics press. You can still find that online if you're curious to see how the 80-year timeline was arranged. However, that plan was spearheaded by then-publisher Dan DiDio, who was fired from that position before the Free Comic Book Day Generation Zero issue was released to kick off that event. Amazingly, the book was actually printed, but all 1 million copies were pulped without a single copy leaked to the public. The story in that Generation Zero issue was eventually released as an epilogue, available in the trade paperback collecting the Flash Forward miniseries. But with DiDio no longer in charge, the 5G plans were set aside, and this instead led to a story called Dark Knight's Death Metal. This cosmic tale involved a dark multiverse, filled with universes populated by grim versions of DC heroes. A cosmic being named Perpetua being freed from the Source Wall, a mystical barrier separating our multiverse from the great unknown, and a plan by the Batman Who Laughs, one of the denizens of the dark multiverse, a Bruce Wayne infected with Joker venom, to recreate the entire of existence in his image. This story was massive and completely gonzo, including concepts like a Batman in a robot dinosaur body called Batmansaurus Rex, and a battle between the Hall of Justice, piloted by Lex Luthor, and a castle that transforms into a giant Batman. Personally, for me, I found it a little too far out there and over the top for my tastes, but overall critics and fans seem to have enjoyed the story. The event ended with a brand new infinite multiverse, rather than just 52 universes as had been introduced back in the miniseries 52. Check out the 52nd episode of the show for more info on that. DC introduced this new multiverse with a series of books subtitled Future State, showing a potential future where John Kent has taken over as Superman after his father's disappearance, and a cyberpunkish Gotham City whose law enforcement has been taken over by the robotic Peacemakers. Current stories in the Batman and Superman titles seem to be moving towards that future possibly coming to pass, but seeing how much they changed the status quo, it's hard to imagine that actually staying that way for any significant length of time. The biggest change with this new infinite multiverse, also referred to as the Omniverse, is that DC is now saying that every single story published is canon, just in alternate universes. Their goal in this is to hand-wave away any contradictions that may arrive in future stories, telling fans they all count, but they don't all need to agree. The upside of this is that creators should have more freedom to tell any story they want to tell, even if it goes against the current history of the character, which in theory leads to better individual stories, but slightly less cohesion between stories. Of course, this sort of thing is what led to the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, so only time will tell how long this Infinite Frontier Omniverse will last before another attempt to clean up continuity is made. If the past is any indication, I'm gonna guess about 8 years. So, see you in 2029 for the next update. Another story that has received a significant update is that of Donald Blake, relayed to you back in episode 39. For a quick reminder, Dr. Donald Blake was the man who discovered Thor's hammer and turned into the Thunder God, but was later revealed to be a construct created by Odin to teach Thor humility. Later stories retconned this again to him being a real person, and the last we saw Blake when I recorded that episode, his immortal decapitated head was living in a dream world with a Norman Rockwell-like life. My exact words were, quote, "He could reappear at any moment if one of the writers decides to bring him back, but that seems unlikely for at least the near future." Well, just over a year later, I was proven wrong. In this story, written by Donny Cates and drawn by Nick Klein, we find Blake in his dream world when the Midgard serpent insinuates himself into this idyllic existence, revealing to the Doctor that his life is a fiction. The serpent offers some of his power to the human, wanting to use him as a pawn for yet another attempt to get his revenge on Thor. That backfires, however, as the piece of the Odin force remaining in the Doctor's soul allows him to fully absorb the serpent's powers. However, even with all this magic at his fingertips, Blake was still stuck in his dream world, and over the intervening years, he lost his mind while trying to reach out to Thor and get him to switch back. Thor either never heard or ignored those pleas, but eventually did make the switch back into Donald Blake's form in an effort to fix Mjolnir, basically turning it off and turning it back on. And with Blake back in charge, he snapped the cane that Mjolnir turns into as part of the transformation and vowed to never return Thor back to this plane of existence. In his new powered-up state, Dr. Blake easily bested Loki, Sif, the Warriors 3, and sought out every other being that had possessed Thor's power, including Beta Ray Bill and Throg. Yes, this story also includes Frog Thor if you didn't already have a reason to go check it out. Taking more pieces of the Odin force from those other Thors, Blake then took the magical axe Jarnbjorn and attempted to cut down and absorb the source of that magic, the world tree known as Yggdrasil. However, all of Asgard teamed up, including the spirit of Thor, who had escaped the Dream Realm and was now possessing the Destroyer armor. And together they were able to defeat the Doctor before this could come to pass. Thor, in his mercy, not only spared Donald Blake's life at this point, but after discussing the issue with Loki, Blake was made the new God of Lies, as Loki willingly gave the title up. That was in April 2021, and since then we haven't had any appearances of this new God of Lies, but with Donny Cates currently still writing the book, you never know when the character will return. The final episode I'd like to revisit is the most recent of the three, and is episode 85, where I discussed Tony Masters, aka Taskmaster. Young listener Aiden wanted to know about the character, as he was showing up in various related media, like the Marvel Villainous game. And I suggested that made sense, since Taskmaster was one of the main antagonists of the then upcoming Black Widow movie. Well, now that Black Widow has been released, we have collectively discovered that the Taskmaster in that movie was not Tony Masters at all, but instead was Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of the man who runs the Red Room program that trains the Black Widows. While I was looking forward to seeing Tony Masters on the big screen because I enjoy the character, I think the twist of who the Taskmaster actually was made much more sense for the story they wanted to tell. Since Antonia survived the events of that film, she could return sometime down the line, or the Taskmaster title could easily be passed on to another person, either of which I would be happy to see. The other thing I wanted to touch on in this 100 episode anniversary are some questions that I've received that I don't think will ever become episodes. I appreciate every question I receive. However, I think some of the queries don't fit the show as I see it. I prefer to keep this show more fact-based rather than answer questions that are my personal opinion, although I'll sometimes speculate on the future based on facts that I have. So questions like, which protagonist/antagonist in comics have the best/worst relationship are so subjective that I probably won't get around to answering them. Others are so open-ended that I'm not sure where to even start. A couple of those examples include, what are some great twists on known universes worth seeking out, and what are some characters in comics that mirror those in literature? Then there's questions where I don't really feel like I have a lot to add. Jordy Jeans asked me, do you think it's a tragedy that Alejandro Jodorowsky's adaptation of Dune never got made? And he directed me to the documentary simply titled Jodorowsky's Dune. And now having watched that, the answer is most definitely yes. But other than that, and recommending everyone go check out that documentary to see why, I don't think there's anything significant I can say on the subject. But again, I would love to get any questions you have that you think would make a good subject to cover in a future episode. Or just general feedback to tell me what you think I'm doing right and what I could improve on. You can send any and all of those via email to welcometogeektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcometogeektown or Twitter @geektownpodcast. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, come join the Patreon at patreon.com/welcometogeektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.